sound of the hope for a day tomorrow, apparently. One cricket. That would be great, wouldn't it? Just one cricket. Would we even care then? Just because we stepped up now to do something? Really do something, not just yak about it, not just talk about it. It's really all that it's going to take. And they're waiting on us to do that. Those them. Ubiquitous they. Those people in seats of decision and color of authority. Waiting for you to put them back in their place. And it's, in my mind anymore, it's not that hard. It's not that difficult. It's not that endless a discussion. It's not reams and reams of paper to explain the authorities to the authority. It's really not that difficult. Yet we hear the crickets a whole lot more than the one I play. Hoping for a better day when there is only one cricket, and then it won't matter. It won't matter long before that. It's not going to take everybody, folks. It just takes up a few people, as we find out. And I'm always amazed at how always on that edge of the, just inside of what we actually need is always seems to be readily available to work and persist and overcome most of what we need, setting the stage, and not many more will show up. So I thank you for those of you that did go to the petition last week and gave us a little more burst to send a message that the attorneys aren't going to do this to us, that the governments aren't going to do this to us, that there is a better way for the government that was promised to us to function, and it's gone off the track because we didn't step up to keep it there. And I hear lots of people talking about lots of things, and government is like I heard, well, this last hour, and I know nobody who will hear this on the podcast or the blogcaster. I think it was Corbett saying that government, limited government, is a utopia. Well, it's not. If everyone looks at a mining district, you'll find out that we did it. I think we did it pretty good then, and that's pretty much when you look at those examples, you realize your county governments came from that origins, and that's when people were outlawed of the government. And so we have our examples, we just aren't picking them up, and we make redefinitions because we can't comprehend what's gone on, and we forget our past. And so there's good things to pick up and hold, and there's some things that we got to throw down. And one of the things we have to hold is that we had the obligation always, we were told right in the beginning of this thing, we could have that republic if we could keep it. Now, I know there's a Republic of China, a Republic of North Korea, all these republics. And the point was we had a republic and form of representative government that was tied to the soil. And the law, the rules, and the conveyances and the authorities of the so-called sovereign that we passed it to us to do so. And that was supposed to be this relationship that is limited. It's limited to that relationship, actually, as I'm starting to see it, that we don't even begin to come close to. That I talk about this stuff, and it's like people just don't understand me for some reason. I don't understand it, except that when I can sit down and talk, as I said last week, I can talk with people about it in particular, and don't let the story run off into the brush, into the weeds, off into the internet, never land. You constrain your conversation to the subject matter that you need to be doing instead of everything. It comes pretty quick to understanding to most people. We have bad habits, though, and so this is one of our problems. We want to go back to that old method of, to me, it's like I'm looking at a bunch of people that are ADHD or something. They can't focus. Brilliant, but they can't focus. And there's an internal infestation, internal virus in us that did that causes that problem. And we have to work to get that out. We have to make ourselves healthy in that regard. And that takes a little bit of work, but it's not impossible. And I say that because I work really hard, not to be one that can do that, but I've worked really hard and found myself to be one in a place that can narrow the scope of what people have to do and give the functions of that, imparting that in ways that makes it work. I certainly can't know that it's forever everywhere, but I can certainly know that with respect to certain things tied to soil and where our rights are supposed to come from and how these people are supposedly in government that now have overtaken our government, you can quickly identify these people. Quickly. In fact, I was just at a mining association, not the district meeting, but the association meeting, talking to someone after the meeting about their issue, and this came very apparent very quickly. It's immediate. The violation is immediate in law. But not so much are we in law, and part of that is because we haven't stepped up. So what we do is we listen to lies. We listen to lots of people thinking that they have an authority. And when those people are listening to other people that are liars, lawyers. Bar association is very prevalent here. It's not the only one, but it's the most prevalent. No one goes anywhere officially without going through the influence of an attorney or bar member. Know that. So it's not, again, that's an ongoing focus. I can put the light of 1,000 suns on that organization. And that's a global organization, folks. If you don't know how fast this gets around the globe, when you hear about the imposition of rule of law and democracy, you see the global control that this mere trade association has on the world. When you understand a legal advisor to the Holy See is this same trade organization, but at the international bar, you start realizing the close connection to all the things I'm talking to you about, why it's global, why the Pope comes out and promotes climate change, even though he's a scientist and he should know better. Why you see an A2030, something he embraces, that Pope embraces this, and why everybody, I don't know why everybody can't see that these migrants and these refugees are the product of this plan in action. This is not a doubt. The mixing of everybody up is not just the mixing of everybody up, it's the utility. They become the part and parcel, the tool of the future and ongoing and future oppression against us. That the lies come falling out of this thing. It comes out the rule of law and democracy, and it's used as a club. It's the private club, folks. They go out and they beat the world down, and they tell lies behind all this in that promotion and all the other promotions we've heard of. And so it's always nice and a little bit gratifying to hear when you keep your eye on the real thing, the real reality, that it finally starts to rise back to the surface when the bums rush was on and the minions took over people's faculties. And they still take them over, but for those of us that are looking in, we can see clearly and see the point and keep on. I say see the point, but move on to the real enemy here against us. And it's not just the bar, but they're our main focus because they're the main legal imposition that limits your life and extends license to commit crimes against you under the color of people's belief that it's valid. And it's done so by those that work it because that's what you believe in, and they have your mind confused. So what was kind of nice to see here, people seeing this is a lot quicker too. This fabrication that was done in the West upon the East, that we now start seeing more of a correct action, and somebody who really never bowed a bit and is that sovereign, that reflection, which Russia came in to support. And I understand there's also geopolitical and other interests in all this. It's not all pure. I don't give license. I'm not giving license to the problems. It's just that we're looking at certain evidences. I tell you to look at the news as the notice of evidences of things instead of as information for you. It's evidence of what's happening or going to happen or what didn't happen or what couldn't happen, and the reasons really more importantly than what I look at. So I tell you, analyzing some of these court cases, the one recent one was to read between the lines. An eco-terrorist group couldn't get that bad, or at least it could be demonstrated that the chemical used to put in the beef and the pig, the meat that you get, is no good for us, that they tried to get into that court case, and they didn't make it. Well, the court goes and explains how that is. So reading between the lines, you can change your status. You can get in to stop it. So again, it's information to us if we know how to read through what the story is trying to tell us. But here's one. It tells us the ongoing proof shows the violation of the West in the global sense. The rule of law and democracy is another violation as they put it on everybody. It is governance. It is not government. It's a governance. It's by a trade organization. It's long memory here. Long connections back in through history. It only comes out as the Bar Association, but it's got a deeper connection to lots of other things in the history. It's almost beyond me to even fathom how this actually connects, but it does. But you can't deny it actually once you start reading and getting the black and white in your eyes. Folks, I keep telling you this. It's probably maybe the most important thing I've told you ever. You have to get the black and white in your eyes. You have to read this stuff. There's nothing I can tell you ever that's going to be more powerful than you proofing out a viable and trusting source of information. Like I said, don't go just to the internet general. You have to go through many original source documents. You read the words that we're being told that are already there and have been for hundreds and hundreds of years, and then hundreds of years for the United States. It is beyond question, beyond doubt in your mind what I've told you, and you will never ever, once you see the black and white in your eyes, you will never ever ever doubt what you saw, and you will not doubt what I've told you, like you might when I see this happen lots of times. When the pressure comes on somebody and they only listen to what I might say, they don't have the black and white in their eyes, they have absolutely zero resistance against an authority. When you see the black and white, it's like switching this big engine on that is almost insurmountable. Doesn't mean you're not going to have problems, but you can address it, and it's almost real. It's real time. It's not you having to go research anymore. I'm amazed at how many people I talked to for years that when they finally get into their own thing and they have to go read, as I say, you need to read this, you need to read this, and this is the subject matter of your path. You need to read this, and immediately they see what I've been telling you all for a long time. A lot of different capacities and different constructions. Whether it be the military oppression that we're under, the occupation is a little bit less, but an occupation, an invading force, the usurpers at the point of the law, even if they weren't, the domestic enemies, the foreign enemies inside our gates, all that stuff, the categorized potentials I tell you to put in your mind once you see the black and white, come pouring out once you see the black and white. It's beyond question. And so that's what I've been asking you all this time. Read the black and white. Don't let other people think for you. Don't let other people read for you. Don't let other people compile information for you. And that's the thing I find about the internet. Lots of compiled information really isn't that good. And so you have to be very, very, very careful, but it's right there. And we hear this sovereignty stepping up against a bully in the world, against the oppression, against the rule of law and democracy. And we find out as we go through the many years of destruction that the Zio West has put upon Syria is starting to rise to the top. It's causing us we're seeing that, all we're doing is causing these people a bunch of trouble, and it's going, and until Russia stepped in to kind of bring a bigger brother, if you will, support for this information, for this independent determination of a nation of people, through their democratically elected officials. If you think that we were bringing rule of law and democracy as a legitimate cause, this guy Assad is a democratically elected official, and recently so, under the foreign imposition of the world coming in, foreign to not Russia, but foreign to the Syrian government and what it wants to do for itself. The Syrian government has to make a capitulation of sorts, but it comes out in the answers the whole problem of the wrong that the bullies in the world are producing, to try and use the excuse of bringing rule of law and democracy to Syria, where after promising elections, the tyrant Assad offers amnesty to rebels. So what's happened in the last week or so since this ceasefire? And again, it's a ceasefire only to those that would say they're not going to fight against the Syrian government. It's not all those that finally agree that we got to, within our own structure, we have to quiet ourselves down, come peacefully together to resolve this for ourselves. But all y'all that are foreign and attacking us, we're not going to stop the war against you. That's the invasion we have to stop. So the ceasefire is only for those people in Syria that are Syrians and agree to come back together and make peace within their democracy. That President Assad has to capitulate to the foreign imposition now, to go beyond what their constitution required. Even though they've just done it again and he was voted into office again, he's now promising elections here. I think it's in April. Remember, this is who they called the tyrant. Now, he may have been in other ways, but not with respect to the democracy and him running the country as the people had expected under their constitution. Not only did the tyrant of Assad offer up elections for April, that's pretty quick in my mind as well, He's offering amnesty to all rebels. Remember, these were supposedly the moderate rebels that the United States government was fostering and encouraging to be disruptive in the government. He's offering them complete amnesty. And I've seen a couple videos where that process is being accepted and they're working through. They had something like 86 different factions of internal or rebels, so-called, that were people that were disgruntled, to take the opportunity to be disgruntled to go against the government, when in fact they didn't really want the is-us or is Zio West to actually invade their country. They just were disgruntled about how the democracy they had wasn't quite working for them. Kind of like it doesn't work everywhere. And let's make a distinction. It's different than the government function is different than what was supposed to happen within the laws of your nation, like for the United States. If the law was recognized as they say it does and not usurped by the Bar Association, it really wouldn't matter what the government actually did for the most part. Remember, politics is supposed to be separate from your life and the protection of your life. And that's in the law, if you know where to look. So, the tyrant that the West, Zio West tells that Assad is, has offered elections pursuant to their constitution again, and offered those rebels that he so-calls hates and all that complete amnesty. And the words from the people that are called rebels are coming in and saying, well, I'm just a student. I didn't like where the government was going, but I don't need to see this is-us coming in and taking us down either. I just want to go back to school. I just want to start learning. I want to get back. We want our people to get back to a natural life. That this tyrant is doing any of this, you should take note. You should take note of the lie that we're being told in the West. And this is also an imposition of the West and the Zio West forcing action internally under the color of democracy on a democracy. That they have to capitulate is all, to me, is a violation to begin with. It's a trespass on that sovereignty to force these elections, where they've already been done here a couple years ago and Assad won, that is a violation. Yeah, it's obviously a violation where is-us is being pushed into this area. So this is how these forces work. I want you to look at this and what's happening over there, because I tell you it's a mirror for what's happening in the West. To you, if you live in the West, the global reach we have behind the Woodshed, pretty fast. That trips me out all the time, but I can sit here and think about it. It's kind of neat, huh? We can get our word out. And thank you all y'all that have been donating to the servers and the equipment to keep the hosts on, and WT, and if you did anything for Jules at UCY, thank you for all that. It's keeping a little bit of energy now this time of year with at least the RLM server fees coming up. It makes a nice time to do this, and I'll probably pull down the requests for the donations now. But if you can remember, throughout the year we have costs going on, not to me. I don't pay any of this. This is all gratis to me through Grimner and Grammy Mary, and then accepting the broadcast through UCY and whoever else is picking it up. I just come and I do the broadcast and they give me the place. So that's all. What they're doing is on them. I just cover what costs I have, and the people that help me cover those costs for me, because that's just the way it's working. So we all do our little bitty part to get this out. So again, I just wanted to, as a thought crossed my mind, thank you very much for helping this last month. For sure, it helped a lot to keep us going. We got at least another year, maybe two, on a couple of streams, and so we'll continue. That just want to remind you that sovereignty is exampled in Syria. A co-sovereign in Russia was recognized. You look at two evidences of two people recognizing a certain type of sovereignty. That's a witness, that's a fact. In international law, that's supposed to carry weight. But see, this is the example of why anarchy doesn't work, because anarchy says in the world there's not cohesive understanding, and you're going to have bullies and trespassers and hordes and people that want to come and take your stuff. And you want to see anarchy, you're watching it right there in Syria right now. And you see what it breeds. It breeds complete destruction and strife. You have an organized democracy. Within it has an inside democracy wanting to spring up. And it didn't do it correctly. That's the chaos you see. And so the government's trying to bring itself back into peace with the help of Russia. You're seeing a very big example here, that it doesn't look like it in the United States of America, but that's exactly what the people have to do. Take the position of Assad and start taking the reins of power back from these people that have usurped your life. to me, again, I just look at, it's not news. It's just the example of where people fail, how they're fixing it, and if it applies, what we need to do or not do. A lot of this reflection in the global war of terror upon you, it makes all of us common in that regard, that we really have to understand how each one of us is dealing with the particular war upon us and how to deal with it, and take examples of those things that do work. In other words, Russia needed the big brother to help an independent nation protect itself from the onslaught. Now, there was geopolitical interest to do that. The point is that there's a common recognition. For the people of the United States, each one of us is a nation unto ourselves, if you will. We have the limits of international law. I can look at it exactly like this. And we are organized. Our bodies have organs that are organized in a system. We have the judiciary, we have the legislature, we have the execution of our will, and so we have the fractal of us is our government. It's not unnatural to have this government, however you want to call it. It is whether or not it serves you properly. And so we can see around the world how people have to deal, the cause and effect of things, and then how people have to respond to all this. For whatever their particular potential view is, I don't know. I mean, everyone starts focusing on certain things. That's just another psyop in a way. You focus on one thing and you let a bunch of other things go through. It's not that simple. But I just wanted you to know it's coming to the top to show that what level Assad is a promoted. I mean, he's in a democratic government who he is taking the reins to assure that continues, but it's under foreign pressure, and you can't call him a tyrant when they're allowing this either. See, this is the big lie that's been going on, and he's also given extended amnesty to all the rebels. If they just stop fighting and get back to a peaceful nation, and then everyone can turn their attention on the actual invader, which is iOS. It can't be said any other way. And so this settling of the people and the cohesion of the people is another evidence that they're actually starting to bring food in and things, but they're actually now being able to turn their attention and target the real threat to the real democracy, not the democracy and rule of law that these international trespassers advanced by the Bar Association and warmongers and whatever classification of ism you want to throw on attacking another ism. It's the ism of the isms. It's the ismism. Everyone's not keeping their hands to themselves, I guess, is the thing I can see at this point. But because they're able now to turn their attention on who the real culprit is while they work it out amongst themselves, they're actually starting to affect a big damage against this is-us, ISIS, and now coming out from someone in Jordan, I think it is here, analysts, you're moving out, the cancer is moving from the body now. Saudi Arabia and Turkey plotting to transfer ISIL to Jordan from Syria. So there's evidence now that it's cracking, folks. The invasion is breaking down. It's not a pitched battle back and forth. There has been, like I told you, once Russia came in with its air power and its technology, if there was a balance of problem, if the line was the tug of war was neutralized between the two parties, this broke that. In fact, now we're starting to see it's not just a pitched battle everywhere. No, Russia goes in and cleans out a lot of places with their air power, and it changes the tide. And now ISIL is moving. And so apparently there's an analyst in Jordan that's saying it's moving into Jordan. And now I find that interesting, because isn't that where the United States was training all the people in Jordan to move in early on, back into the Assyrian condition, and now they're moving back. So this is not unusual, but they identify that Turkey and Saudi Arabia is involved, and we know the United States was there prior. So Jordan is another hub of degradation. That kingdom there is a real problem. But again, see how this happens. You start to move, you organize yourself, cause peace amongst yourself as best you can, and then you turn on the real problem. Stop infighting, and then you can address the foreign body, and you drive the foreign body out. And in this case, it happens to be physically. Well, I guess in a way it's the same as in a body of a physical invasion, and your body has defenses, and it has to come to bear upon that to drive out the invader. And so what's happening is you're seeing that invader being driven back to the home, which was what we declared. I was reading about that behind the Woodshed. This is not new, really, stuff. It's just proving the stories we were told about coming out of Jordan, and the organized, the higher organization was coming out of Jordan. It's moving back into Jordan. So this is, again, evidence of how you fight an enemy and how you get him to move. And this is an indication of what we the people have to do, such that we do have a we the people that can respond. So as I've shown you, the rule of law and democracy has written up rules and using the UN to create a plan of action for the 21st century. We knew it as Agenda 21, but they have made plans. They use interim plans to show goal settings and objective setting and goal setting parameters in certain year increments. It could be 15, 20, 40, 50 year increments. They are having a plan. If you don't, you're losing. It's that simple. But we see now the utility of the tool also, that when you have a war, people move. That's what that was all about. It was part of the plan. It's the other plan that's running, not just to go down after Syria, but to implement this Agenda 2030, where we read it's making you migrate the herd out to affect other places. Those other places take advantage of that. They get to change in the moment of the chaos, the anarchy upon them at that moment, and then they get to redirect that energy back to other places that they're going to overwhelm and develop. It's a pretty interesting plan, and when you start to see it this way, that the migration and refugees is the plan. It's the tool, and it causes certain responses. Now we're seeing that. EU bombshell: the Balkan route to Germany is closed. So now we see the destruction of the EU as well, and the open borders policy that last month the Norwegian Prime Minister Emma Solberg proclaimed that if she became convinced that Sweden's refugee crisis was set to spiral out of control or, quote, break down, as she called it, she may be prepared to close her country's borders altogether in what would quite possibly amount to a contravention of Norway's duties under the Geneva Convention, and a move that would almost surely trigger a rash of human rights violations. That's the plan, folks. And human rights are the ones that are given to the UN and the state to their utility. Don't ever forget this condition when you use the word and term human rights. It's the condition of the state utility of people in human trafficking. Okay, there's no rights involved. They give you the thought there's a right, and then about 3/4 or 2/3 of the way through that document, they take it all away, subject to the state. So this is done, and they say it's going to violate the convention. It doesn't violate the new way, and that's what the state of Norway, the nation of Norway, is having to deal with underneath all of this. That they're willing now to shut the door. They're balkanizing the European Union right here with this people. This was the plan. It's fascinating to watch this stuff roll out. They're doing that in the United States in a different way, but they divide you up and they cause you to have to do things that you wouldn't rather ever do, but it drives you into doing something that the other invader wants you to do. There's a very sophisticated gameplay going on here. And so we see the destruction, destruction of the plan, we see the interim plan changing right before our eyes, and we're all standing here like deer in the headlights, it seems. I mean, to Flint, Michigan, if you didn't hear what I was telling you, that's now the hammer, the drum beat for UN acceptance of standards and public-private partnershiping and privatization and the leverage black hole funding. If you don't, and then poisoning the people. If you don't hear that as the global agenda is making a toehold, at least in Flint, Michigan, and I told you it's going everywhere. The water condition is everywhere. You're going to have to live with water, and that's the first thing one of the first things they take away from you. That you're watching this different way to do the same thing. They're bringing foreign standards over you and making you irresponsive to what you really have to do. Everyone says, what do we do? Well, there's a private right of arrest in most places. These officials can't be making crime. All you got to do is identify the crime and arrest them. Oh, well, what does that do? You just arrest them by the old. Well, that puts at least it starts to show that people aren't helpless. Let's put it that way. It puts them underneath a system and now it puts scrutiny on the entire system to do justice. Do I expect it? Yeah, I do expect it. Do I expect to see it out of these people that are criminals? No, I don't. That's why we're having to go here. You can't, please do not misunderstand what has to happen. When I'm telling you in our lawsuit, and I'm having to do it again in another case, you have to challenge the seat of decision for its felony against you based on its fabrication of a false identity that they apply to you. They don't have the right to do that. Do we expect victory on this? Well, in a way, the notoriety is the only victory, because you're inside a household of the Bar Association, and they're in control. They're in control of the minds of the people as well. Understand the battlefield. So we've been, really, I look around, it's like we've been balkanized, we've been destroyed already before we got there. So we got to kind of cut through all that. But we're watching the destruction of the EU and the principles of the EU, and they don't care about violating Geneva Convention. Why? Because the human rights that they're also not going to be held to really only go to the state to decide ultimately. And so just watch this bouncing ball as they pull this off. It's really neat to watch the tools that they use, the deceptions that go on, the investigations that'll happen. All this seems to be a waste of time. I don't know why it's such a hard thing to figure out. I think behind the woodshed, I think I can see at least clearly pretty quickly what's going on. That I don't know why other people, I'm talking about the ones in the seats and decision, why they don't understand what's going on sufficiently to respond. Or at least, remember folks, just asking the question would be nice, wouldn't it? Just ask the question. We can't even get the question asked by these people. And then when we get the question, the committee together to ask the question, it's like a song and dance. And all the people at 911 know about that one. They just started fabricating stuff. And this next report back over still in the Middle East, and the dynamic and the tools being used and all the ways that they were bringing in, causing this destruction, this anarchy, this chaos, this migration of people, human trafficking in other ways. Just understand that you may not agree with me on that, but you need to read more if you don't, but understand this is what's going on. This is a global human trafficking operation. And that's just one piece of it. And it's done by this war machine that just takes advantage of all your needs and your helplessness against most of it. While you're trying to look for water to drink and food to eat and heat to keep you warm, they're winning. And on the other side of the United States, they got just the opposite. They keep you warm, keep you fed, and keep you just underneath your pain tolerance, and you accept it all. But remember, never forget Benghazi. I think what my source of information that told us what was going on there was absolutely accurate back in I don't remember the year now. It's been so many years. 2014 or something. I told you that the president had to be the only one that could be doing what happened. Well, then there was these committees that came out, and Trey Gowdy is one of the guys that have been put on there. I've been real disappointed to see, this is another game going on. However, there is interesting information that kind of creeps out periodically over this tool that they used to hide certain things and utilize United States authority and cover the war we lost when they lost the embassy. And I believe it was Gary L. posted a comment somewhere. He kind of summarized this whole process in a comment to some article. I think he did a pretty decent job. I don't have a link to it, but the point is that when you start investigating this thing, you start seeing the real story behind the story. But the title here is Obama is furious, big capital furious, at Trey Gowdy over Benghazi bombshell. Some of the truth is leaking out about these things. Again, the spin that's put on this, the story that we're told, the story we have to look through, no different than we say that Assad is some tyrant, but he actually moves the people into, he tries to bring peace over his nation and brings on the vote. Now, I'm not going to say and qualify that vote is anything different than it is in the United States, although it might be, because they actually have popular vote there, if I understand this correctly. They don't have an electoral vote, which they have in the United States of America. So there may be a very popular thing, and just because it's a popular vote at 50-50, if that's what they do, that's not really good either. That means that just short of half the people could not like it, and they have to put up with it. So you find some of these failures in democracies that have become accepted to very low level. The bar is set very low. I suppose if you raised it back up to 80%, But then again, this is just leadership that was supposed to be constrained in the United States, so it really shouldn't affect everybody either. If you didn't vote, it shouldn't affect you. Again, like I say, production is not supposed to be affected by the politics, so it doesn't matter who's in office. And I'll tell you what, that's what I've approached all of this based on this whole point for many, many years, and it seems to work out all right. That it doesn't matter who's in the office, they're going to have to recognize these obligations and duties. Doesn't matter their political persuasion. It doesn't matter what they believe. It doesn't matter if they think the earth is flat and they actually walk in straight lines. It doesn't matter. Because where it comes to my property, my rights, and their felonious action to interfere with that without a lawful right, they have to be held. They can be held accountable. And so I've approached it a little bit differently, and maybe that's what people don't truly understand, how easy it is to get at this thing. And certainly the criminals aren't going to know it. But so this Benghazi thing is still festering. It's a festering wound. It's coming up now at the point where in this presidential election thing that it's calling out Hillary Clinton, again and again and again. Not to say, and please, I'm not advocating any other of the presidential candidates. What are we now down to? We're now talking about how big Dick Cheney is, or how little Dick Cheney is. It's really ridiculous where the language has gone that we talk about how long our Dick Cheney is. And people think that's cool and that's okay. How grade school are we going to allow our country to go, even to where we agree to even listen to these people that purport to be able to lead us? Purport and to lead. We think that's a real. And even if they got in the office, right, they're not supposed to affect us. But really, we can't affect when they become bullies and go and beat up on someone else. That's really on us too, because we were supposed to somehow constrain that. So this Benghazi thing is still viable, folks. And Trey Gowdy's doing some things right now to pull out this fact. The Benghazi Select Committee already mortally wounded Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign, but that's only if people listen. By exposing her secret email service, and when Trey Gowdy says that he has an eye-opener report set to release, everyone should pay attention. This is the whole thing. Apparently they're going to issue some kind of a report. I don't care about what it does. Hillary Clinton, what they do to Hillary Clinton or Obama, I know the story behind that. Obama is the problem. Actually focusing on Hillary Clinton somehow is a bit wrong, and they really haven't been asking the hard questions. My point is that it's still a problem. They can't whitewash it like they did 9/11. And you have to understand that. This is not quite so easy. And so when they put on somebody, when they chose Trey Gowdy and everyone, and right before that they prepared him to be the white knight, so to speak. And then when he got into the committee, he kind of became a little kitten, kind of asking all the misdirected questions. Didn't get to the point. Didn't get to the point that I got to, folks, that quickly. That has been proving out that not only did the President Obama cause the failure to rescue people in what was deemed to be an embassy, because it's the people, it's the entourage. He also lost a war where that entourage was the territory of the United States. There was supposed to be major protection, and it failed. So we're told a big story, there's a big cover-up. Why? Why is Trey Gowdy covering this up even though he wants to expose it? I'm going to be interested to see whether or not they point the finger at the guy, the president, the office that had the responsibility to protect the country. They keep focusing on Hillary Clinton. That's a division and diversion. It may be relevant to the extent that she was a co-conspirator. But it seems that people who are blind aren't going to see any of that anyway. I'm wanting to know for the reality of what was going on. How heinous are the people that are in there that allow us to go to find out, all we'll listen to now, we think it's funny, and we think it's the important things that we have candidates that are going to become the president, that all they can think, they got their Dick Cheney in the gutter. And that becomes relevant information. I think about this stuff. This is where we are. This is the aspirations of this nation. Speaking of the cover-ups and the committees that do so, there's a little bitty interesting proof that came in the back door in a way, back over in the UK, about 9/11 cover-up. Remember, don't forget also, if you don't want to forget Benghazi and who was really responsible there. You also don't want to forget about that Building 7. And we have a little bit of a court win over an interesting way to get at it. So I want to, all you tacticians out there, think about this. This is how the Rosa Parks case was created as well. It was fabricated in order to get an outcome they needed. And they plotted it and planned it and they got it, which may have been a good deal. But my point is that this is what legal is. Legal is the plotting and the planning, the art, the artifice of getting things done, moving the society and engineering the society in certain ways, for good or bad. It's a neutral statement. But the UK man wins a court case against BBC for 9/11 cover-up. Was very interesting tactically, it seemed, where he was able to challenge the validity of the claim made by the BBC that there was an actual thing going on and that it wasn't fraudulent, that it wasn't a setup, over that little 20-minute error where the Building 7 is still standing while they're saying that it had been dropped but 20 minutes before. Tony Rook refused to pay a TV license fee because the BBC intentionally misrepresented facts about the 9/11 attacks. He alleged it is widely known that the BBC reported on the collapse of World Trade Center Building 7 over 20 minutes before it occurred. WT7 was a 47-story skyscraper that was not hit by a plane on 9/11 but collapsed at free fall speed later that day. So Rook said the BBC had to have had prior knowledge to the attack by making them complicit in the attack. He presented the BBC footage to the judge along with a slew of other evidence, and the judge agreed that Rook had a reasonable case to protest. Rook was found not guilty, and he was not fined for failure to pay the licensing fee. And so, for us, behind the woodshed, looking for ways to get at this, tactically, this was really brilliant, a brilliant setup. Well, I haven't talked with the man. I don't know if it was a plan to do that. That was brilliant. If it happened to be that it turned out to be a neat way to attack it, that's brilliant. The BBC was, in their case, let's go with the authority of a judge saying he agreed with Rook saying that there was a misrepresentation of the facts. And then that brings the BBC in complicity with 911. It's beyond now, folks. It's beyond 19 box cutting carrying Muslims. Just evidence. You can believe all this stuff or you don't. Just evidence. How much do you put on it? And what can you do with it? Remember, that's not much different than the case that said that climate change was a religion. You don't think it is, but there it was. You have the UK court declared in favor of a climate change embracer, that he had philosophical religious rights to do what he was doing, and counter to the needs of his employer. Years and years ago, that was proven out. So we have evidences here that we can use. Interesting tactics to get at them if we want to be creative. I think we are creative, that we can utilize in addressing, coming at them from all different directions in ways that the system itself hasn't been able to get in their councils and figure out how to avoid and evade you. Like all y'all that think that a gold fringe flag means something, you haven't read anything about that, nor do you probably know that they actually had meetings about how to deal with people that make the gold fringe flag, and how they explained they could go ahead and take the gold fringe away and it didn't mean nothing. To get rid of that whole scenario in people. And then it didn't even care to me before, because even if it is an admiralty jurisdiction, you should have remedies you could use there. They're there. Why don't you know the jurisdiction sufficiently enough to stop whining and complaining about it and actually go after them? So you come at them in ways that they've never seen before. You have a higher likelihood of success, even if they don't want to respond to you like it was such a surprise like they did in our lawsuit in 2013. I'm telling you, folks, they didn't even want to open that can. I think it's because they found themselves standing in the room with a can of whoop-ass and they were by themselves. So in our case, they didn't want to open the can. They took a default and they would just kind of do the la, 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 I'm not hearing you thing. Okay, so that makes it a little bit more difficult in the way of enforcement, but it doesn't mean that it goes away. It means that we just now have a foundation in the rule that was to protect us in the law, in a court that was supposed to be there to protect our grants, that now when I claim nonfeasance against the chief judge, she now sits as a felon and a fiduciary breacher. Improper word, but you know what I'm saying. In a way, it's easy to set them up once you have to get the correct perspective, though, not the one you're told. And this really is the bigger work. As I said, get the black and white in your eyes, folks. They're telling us everything we need to know. They're probably telling us more than I've even appreciated. I find more and more stuff as I go. There's always stuff to see. So here's another one. That now that we find the UK guy wins, the court agrees that the BBC is complicit in the 911 to report that Building 7 had gone down 20 minutes before it was even fallen for a reason that it wasn't hit by an airplane. And we've seen this next news coming out. Professor says Jews are behind 9/11 attacks, and she's keeping her job. So a pretty bold statement where we find that if you say that in lots of places, you get condemned. But she's apparently at this point keeping her job. The Oberlin College campus in Oberlin, Ohio, the president of a ultra-liberal Oberlin College is standing by the professor who has been posting a slew of so-called, they say, anti-Semitic rants and the bizarre 9/11 conspiracy theories on social media. The prestigious Ohio College, alma mater of Lena Dunham, released a letter from the president, Marvin Krislov, defending Associate Professor Joy Kerrigan's freedom of speech. Quote, I believe, as the American Association of University Professors says, that academic freedom is, quote, the indispensable quality of institutions of higher education, close quote, because it encourages free inquiry, promotes the expansion of knowledge, and creates an environment in which learning and research can flourish, close quote. So that's just a placating statement. The point is that they're up against this First Amendment problem. This college student this college professor, or she might be up for tenure or something. I'm not quite sure. What was that story? I'm sorry, I can't remember. So much to remember. The interesting thing about this Krislov guy I found, however, and this puts another twist on what we might be looking at. Again, when anybody uses the term anti-Semitic, for the most, and you look, and if it's consistent with the same kind of discussion against Jews, so-called Jews. I mean, there's these religious ones, there's the Zionists. I make the distinction, and the Zionists was able to prove that before. But when you go down the same track and put everything in a big box, it seems to be improper. That the term anti-Semitic calls out the improper position and perspective to me immediately. So that until I could go and talk and find out and get it clarified that anti-Semitic would be including even those Arabs that were in the area and Palestinians too. I don't know that I can listen too much more, except to listen in generalities that this Krislov says, I am a practicing Jew, grandson of an Orthodox rabbi. Members of our family were murdered in the Holocaust, he wrote in a letter. As someone who has studied history, I cannot comprehend how any person could or would question its existence, its horrors, and the evil which it caused. That, notwithstanding that, he has to agree that there's a right to say so. Well, that's pretty generous if it's up to him, but they relate to that First Amendment. And so they got themselves into a sticky wicket. And you notice that statement's completely off the point of the professor claiming that 9/11's attacks were the responsibility of the Jews. So there's an outing here of a condition. There's a capitulation of some sort in the system that they can't actually go after this. We also have the prior case where the guy proved that the BBC's involved in some kind of conspiracy in the events of 9/11. That I think we're seeing some of the walls being broken down of resistance in the system over this whole condition. And notwithstanding that I could really, in a way, care less about any of it, because for me, my answer, as I told you, was, when I first saw the images, was they went and done it. To me, it didn't matter who, is that they just did. They were able to pull off something they told us was going to happen almost a decade before. And crickets, folks. So I don't get too wrapped up in all this, but I see some cracking of the porcelain here. Whether you can use it or not use it, that's I don't know what your intentions all are. I just bring it out to show you that there's information and evidence to start compiling, directions to start go, if you find that important, and it leads you somewhere to making a change someplace. Just the compilation of evidence, or just the ability to chat with somebody and dominate them with your evidence, that's the division amongst us. You're going to have to turn that information into action against people that are sitting in the seats of decision that are either in denial or they are making more policies against us to hurt us and using them as the reason for why they're bringing this harm on us. And this leads us in the future here to some other discussion over these drones. This NDAA, it's the war of terror, folks, is what they're using. It's a fraud. We got a little bit of a glimpse of evidence that there was a conspiracy involved with that in the UK from this little simple license challenge of all things, where you have to pay, if you have a TV, you have to pay the government in order for the license to watch it. Now, why that's a harm and a crime, I don't know, but that's the funky thing they do in Europe, I guess. That's what happens when you live underneath a king or queen or king-ish. A queenism. What do we call this stuff? So information's important. Get proper information is very important. To tie information together is extremely important, so that you, in other words, that's those dots that you connect that counter all that needs to be going on. Because there are the detractors. There's always the people that will have an argument against you, particularly the criminal themselves, certainly. And what I try to show you is it's not an argument. You show the proof of the non-existence of their position, and then you attack them for the fact they didn't have a right to even impose that. You sweep their feet out from underneath them. So this, again, moving into we're still kind of international here, moving in a little farther, going into South America, and the Zika-Zilla thing, and getting proper information, doing the research. Again, John Rappaport has been doing just a yeoman's work doing this research, reporter research for people if they're interested. And this is not about Zika-Zilla to me. This is about the lie that you're being told by the government. It ties into Title 50 United States Code for me, about giving the government giving people, government corporations licenses to harm you, and doing all the work it takes to hide this thing in order also to give themselves more advantage to affect you. That's what the Zika thing does in my mind. It's kind of like the pig's fly flu. We could use it to rip open the fraud. We could use all these things to show that the people in the government and they're working in collusion with big industry to hurt you. Why? Because you need to know that they are willing to do that wherever you exist, everywhere. And so, leaked report, petrochemical pollution causes microcephaly. In fact, I don't even know if I want to read. You'll get this in the blogcaster. Understand, as we talked about, I did the reports before, it looked like petrochemical pollution was causing this problem with the brains, the heads and stuff of the small kids, the kids over there in Brazil, that this was also maybe a condition prior, that they were finding out before all this, that there was something other than these mosquitoes that were causing it, there was something other than this transmission vector, that this was the covering up of a real problem. And to me, this is if it's petrochemical, then you all now have to understand those of you behind the woodshed understand about this problem with Monsanto and Syngenta and all these companies, Cargill, all these companies that are just doing what they can to make a profit. That this affects you wherever you live. It's going to affect you in Brazil, in the middle of nowhere. It's going to affect you where they actually use this stuff and give the so-called license to use it because they claim it only harms you a little bit. Remember, the Clean Water Act wasn't an act to clean water. It was an act to legislate the minimum amount of pollution you could do before you became liable. The exceedance of which, if you kept secret, you got penalized, but if you told them, you didn't. In other words, if you got a sewage dump and you reported it within 48 or so hours, whatever the Clean Water Act says, and you told the government, you most likely would not get penalized, where if you didn't tell them and you got called out on it, you would be penalized. This is not a law. All these laws are not to do what they say. They're to protect the industry, the profit, the liabilities underneath, given the license to operate, the government operate essentially against us. Until we get that recognized in our head, we won't understand this inversion. Legal essentially licenses crime. And then we ask, well, then what am I doing? Living, breathing, just doing my livelihood. Why is that a crime that you have to regulate me? That you give me license to do a little bit? As soon as we throw this nonsense off, that the system that's on us is the way we were taught, and start getting a handle on the way it really is, I'll just tell you, folks, it becomes a whole different battle. I mean, it's not. In a way, it's not even a battle. It's just that we got this momentum in the system that needs to be recorrected and educated, and then hopefully we'll bring accountability to those that are reticent to come into what is really law, as opposed to their license they've been given to make crime against us. But John Rappaport comes on and says, brings up some more. Babies born with small heads and brains impairment. He demonstrated in numerous articles that the purported cause of microcephaly and Zika virus is completely discredited. He comes and says that. Then he comes up with a 1993 statement from Noam Chomsky that delivers the secret for really what this was about. And essentially, again, I could read all this stuff. It's there for you to read. And to me, this shows that why you need. We have a memory in the information, and the internet's a wonderful thing that way, to go back and listen carefully to people and keep an idea about it. But they found out what Noam Chomsky declares in a statement back in 1993, that it was known then that there was a problem with nutrition, and the malnutrition was causing this problem in the babies. There had Brazilian pygmies. It's a condition known as a homons nanicos. The Brazilian pygmy condition by malnutrition. So in this regard, that wouldn't even be petrochemicals, would it? But this little tidbit of information leaked out back in 1993, and it causes a 40% less, by average, 40% less brain capacity. And isn't that about the size of the reduction you see in these babies that are around Brazil? So we have other reasons to go on, and not what we're told. We have to learn to go and cut through that. We need to do the research. There's people like John Rappaport that are digging this stuff up and finding out the truth of things, and that's what it takes. So everybody's can be looked at as doing their part, where they will do their part. Maybe the one that's doing this research may not be the one that advances it, but to not allow it be someone that steps up to advance it, it really puts the work at it's a disadvantage, and it's just useless, isn't it? It becomes information that's more as useless as everything else that doesn't get properly used. And so this deep information gathering and this rethinking, apply how smart you are. Don't just tell us how smart you are. It's like, to me, it's like Wikipedia knowledge. I can go around everywhere and find all this knowledge, but nobody really understands how it's really working, and how to work it, or what it means, or how to take that and use it in some other way. Maybe neither are they really that interested, because they're going to sneak out of this one now they find out. They get down long in the tooth. They go, what am I going to do here? I don't know about that one. And maybe that's the problem with the listenership that doesn't stick around. But we'd rather be entertained. We'd rather listen to the fascination of things. And folks, believe me, I'd do a whole lot of other things if I wasn't doing this. I had a whole other awareness and lifestyle when I was blinded to the actual reality. I had a much more carefree lifestyle. I had a lot less thoughts about things. I was more into more esoteric ideas, and they're there, folks. But because of the oppression, I've had to turn my attention and dedicate myself to this. It's not easy. I'm not saying that it is. I'm just saying that's what seemed to be more important. I'm going to have to maybe do that stuff I wanted to do another time. Hopefully before I get out of here, but not likely because of the way there's not many people really stepping up to do and let's say take the baton of this information and actually go do something with it. Take all these disparate pieces of evidence and put them together, as I'm asking you to do, as I try to point out here behind the Woodshed weekly. Again, this pharma, this business, this knowledge that sits in lack of nutrition, the poisons, this is all not unknown. This is known. This is a known condition, and yet it's ignored. And it's allowed to be ignored. So when you find information, like for those of you in the vaccines, here's another study, when 1 in 88 is really 1 in 29. This is, if you listen to the vaccine and autism rates, there has been, again, the CDC cooks the books in a way that when you start looking at the actual evidence, the timely evidence, not the one they feed you, but the one that they actually have that's current, and you start factoring all this in, your information and your charts, whatever the statistics or the actual calculations, they come out much different. So when we were being told that the vaccine to autism ratio appears to be 1 in 88 for autism, it was actually, when you applied the current numbers, not the ones 4 to 8 years ago, but the current ones, which they didn't let out so easily, it was almost 4 times worse. And and you get this in the Blogcaster if you want to see this. It comes down to the extrapolated occurrence of the ratio, extrapolated down by what they could find in the information that was available but not openly published, was that in another few years, within, I think, if I get maybe 10, there's going to be a ratio of vaccinated autism rates, or actually autism rates in the society, of 1 in 9. That's when you take the real the real numbers and you apply them more than what they're telling us. So this is another point where it needs investigative reporters, if you will, looking at this data with knowledge about how to do it, to at least prepare the evidence for maybe someone else, if not yourself. Because then once you do the calculations, now you have the knowledge. Now you should be the first one in line to try and present it. You have to find the way, the tactic to do so. But the more evidence that we're being told lies, but that the truth can be found out. It doesn't happen on its own. It requires people to actually do the real work, and we're behind. So it's a lot of work. It's persistence, and then it is whatever we can do. It's not necessarily that you dedicate your life like I find myself enveloped for what I do, but those few of us that do this, we kind of pave the way for more comprehensive understanding as more people start coming in and doing other things. And so we all have our place, it seems, if we would just take it up. Now, this corporate licensing, as I tell you, is in through Title 5, United States Code Title 50. And Title 5 works as well because it's administratively rendered as we go through those lawsuits as well. When I tell you to read between the lines, I'm telling you how you get at these guys. Actually, it's all consistent with what I've been saying here. But you see now, another report regarding the coming imposition of corporate control, the governance on a global scale, and we've talked about it before. I don't really get deep into it a lot. I just mention it. Again, it's up to you to take this information and find importance to it. And if we find no importance to it and it's a functioning destruction, we will be destroyed by it. Again, our silence against it will allow it. That this TPP now comes to let's speak again about its corporate connection and corporate collective consequence, as I wrote way back in '99 or so. Was coming, the corporate mediocrity of our world, putting us back into the current Middle Ages, will be this feudal system that we come under because we never really stepped up in a sufficient way to stop it. But it's coming out again to show us that the government, as I tell you through Title 50, is conducive to giving government license to harm you. It would be almost inconceivable that the government would actually step up to stop that power in a way that subverts subverts the sovereignty, gets around the sovereignty, so that the government becomes like this inert thing to it, and you can't actually focus on the government no more. It's kind of what brilliant people do. It's not the people, the talking head that you see. It's the guy standing right behind figuratively, the guy standing right behind the talking head. It's not Obama. It might be Valerie Jarrett. Not the guy, the woman, I guess. So this is how they work it. So the government will be displaced by this corporate governance end to run around. And we see it in the Trans-Pacific Partnership. It's not about free trade. It's about corporate coup d'etat against us. It was an article that was written. Again, we could talk about it. He runs down a history, a bit of a history from 2002. But the bottom line for me, again, is the titles. The people have it. The titles tell us quite a bit. They don't tell us all. They don't give us the actual things that we need to understand that we can use. That takes a lot longer to discuss. I would never ever be able to get to do too many articles at all, to go through the ins and outs, and then most of you wouldn't be interested anyway. There's only going to be a few of you that are interested in any one thing I might talk about. And apparently there's a lot of people that are not interested at all. At all. Which is scary. Because that's us being crickets, and I already know that's not going to cut it. But here, it's a corporate coup d'etat. It comes under Title 50. You can't guess that the United States would be going against its own laws to say we're going to give government license to hurt you. This takes a whole other different understanding to address. But here's the story. Someone else is pointing it out. He goes through the list. If you wanted a summary of what happened and how it's happening and how they're doing it, this article you'll get in the blogcaster the link. It tells us that they don't care to harm us, and they're making every plan to do so, and they do it under this fiction about money, this fiscal and monetary control structure. It's all consistent with the global governance theme. There's nothing out of the plan here, it seems. And they don't see, just as they don't care about harming you and then claiming you get to go to court to argue that what they did harmed you and go through all the terrible courtness that you have to do to prove your case. And then they don't give you hardly but nothing in the vaccines. Because the vaccine court, listen, if there wasn't a vaccine court, then we probably wouldn't have anything to worry about, because there wouldn't be any harm. The establishment of the vaccine court admitted there was going to be harm. And then they throw the added burden on you to go sue in a system that's controlled by the Bar Association. How convenient. And you saw how long it took before someone finally broke through and got some kind of a remedy. That the government doesn't care to hurt you. It needs to be more than just a passing fancy of interest to you. You have to bring it into, not even, I know they do that. No, you have to know they are giving themselves license to do that. There's no license they can give themselves to do that, and they've done it. And nobody understands that precursor problem for them. Any one of these people. It's not government you're looking at. You're looking at men and women that are making these decisions that you need to address. But they'll allow you to get hurt. They don't care. They'll pay you money, folks. This is what this is all about. And what are they paying you but evidences of debt? That they've gained on the backs of people that are not actually commerce entities but deemed to be commerce entities. It's a brilliant, brilliant plan. It's easily identifiable. It's pretty easily explained. And the only problem now is you find out that people that take advantage, that are in that system taking advantage of it, like your sheriffs and your commissioners and your agency people and all the employees, they aren't going to want to hear it, are they? Now there's your other problem. And so it looks like there's nothing you can do. And what have they just done when you get to, we can't do much, you're just going to run into this wall and that wall? Well, they win. It's pretty simple. Look at how brilliant that is. They got you to lose before you even got started. And then they put the obstructions, and then they teach you how you should have never got started, and you don't figure it out. You don't figure out how to get around that. So they don't mind hurting you, and they'll just cover it up by money. And so we get this little story, the little baby that got his face blown off. It's been awarded a accumulation of money. Bucks, actually. $3.6 million is awarded to the flashbang grenade maiming of baby Bao Bao. And that's okay now, folks. So his face gets blown off, and I hope I'm okay. I don't know. Maybe he'll be young enough he didn't have to deal with it. Maybe his face will heal up enough that someone will love him too. But the government just says that money is going to help you. That's really, you see, that's the limit of this existence, is all of a sudden now these evidences of debt, these promises to pay, do something in the world, and that's supposed to placate us. And what they've done in covering that up is the ability to blow your baby's face off, because you can eventually get paid. And the story behind this is not that they got accumulated, because when I said accumulated, you may have missed something. That means that they had to do lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit in all the places that had, of the people, corporations are people too, all the entities that allowed the harm. They had to go and sue every one of them and take the burden on themselves to do so, where the Bar Association is probably not going to do much without their retainer. And they had to prevail, and then they only prevail by what? Agreement. Negotiated settlement. There's no jury trial that's going to bring all this stuff up and do real justice. And then what kind of jury are you going before? A bunch of privileged people that do commerce, and those jury pools are pulled out of the Department of Motor Vehicles, don't you know? Bunch of people that are ignorant as to their status and how they even have to have a driver's license are looking at you as a co-equal privileged people who have no rights. And you expect to get justice. Well, they don't even give you that. It may be a good thing at some point. But this is the point. They believe that the $3.6 million bucks pays off this harm. Now, it may or may not. My point is that they think that money absolves their moral crimes. And it does legally. Now, what's the bill going to be on this one? Parents and on a date. Parents. Again, you know these words are set up, and this may be just ignorance by the authors in the title. I don't know that these were parents or if these were mothers and fathers. Let's go with the title, because it still doesn't matter. But in this case, you find out that the undead have blood and can die and not be in the capacity they were even as a parent guardian over a ward of the state, the child. Parents on a date were asleep in a car when cops arrived and killed them both. How much is the bill going to be to the taxpayers over this nonsense? And how are the little ones going to pay to get their parents back? Forget their mother and father. That was never in them. Parents on a date. They were sleeping in a car. I can only imagine how tired they might have been. They had two families together, kind of like the Brady Bunch, but their parents are on a date. They went somewhere. They pulled over in a car. They kind of went to sleep. So we're told. The cops show up and murder them right there in the car. And they claim there was a gun and all this nonsense. The point is, what justification can you bring? And it's going to be okay. Why? Because eventually these little kids, their little family, like seven kids or something now, don't have my mother and father that love them. This is like the parents finally got away. The mother and father finally got away for one night out, had it all worked out, had everybody happy. They were all, the sons and daughters being taken care of, and they went out somewhere and pulled over, went to sleep, I guess, because they didn't want to go farther. Maybe a smart thing, don't sleep while you're tired, right? You can't even stop, folks. This is what I was telling you a long time ago. You won't be able to walk down the street. And here, I think we're at that day as well. What's this going to... They're justified now in this heinous condition by money. Oh, they'll do their searches. You know how that's going to work out. They might even find a couple people done wrong. But what's the penalty going to be? The penalty can be seen in one case here. Police sergeant found guilty in ordering fellow cops to beat up handcuffed children. Certainly if they're going to kill the parents, they'll beat up the kids too, right? See, there's no limit. And legally it's okay because we can pay you off. It's bribery. We don't even understand it that way. It starts to drive me nuts, actually. I'm getting a little bit uppity. Police Sergeant Anthony Robinson was recently found guilty in ordering other officers under his authority to assault underage suspects while they were in handcuffs. Okay, so what? I mean, the bottom line is that he thought he could get away with it. He did it. There's no compunction in people anymore. There's no scruples in these people who are too smart to be a cop. Not my determination. The Supreme Court has said so. I think it's 3 times now, maybe 4. You can be too smart to be a cop, and you can be too psychologically stable to be a cop, and then you try and tell me that not all cops are bad. I haven't heard much opposition to all this insanity, folks, so I don't know. I'm not so sure. I think I'm going to err on the side of caution, and I'm going to call them all criminals until the non-criminals step up, the non-accomplices step up. We get another. Okay, what happens? You do blow the baby's face off and cost you $3 million. You're going to kill the mother and father of 4 kids or 6 kids, whatever the heck it was. Just kill them dead because they slept in their car. We have a problem here where who cares? We're just going to order. I'm going to order the people that did the beating up. I'm going to order them to beat up these little kids, little goats. Child abuse, is animal abuse apparently. Humans. Your only human rights are to the subject to the state. I guess not that cop. I'm going to tell all my other cops to beat them down, and they're going to do it because they're going to lose their jobs, and they did it. Think about that. They actually did it. You can be too smart and too psychologically stable to be a cop. That should not be okay with all y'all. Really. This could be you one day. You're sleeping, you're driving. I've been there, and you just, okay, I'm not going to chance it no more. I'm going to pull over. You may not wake up, or you're waking up to bullets coming in your windshield now. Because they were feared for their life because you were sleeping. How insane does it have to get, folks? It can get even this insane. State trooper gets just 6 months for raping a car accident victim. How sick are you, folks, to beat people up that are already hurt? A state trooper gets just 6 months for raping a car accident. I'm not going to read the story. That should be enough. If money doesn't get it, you're supposed to take your justice in the meted out plea agreement for 6 months that this guy's going to be got. Now, you and I do that, folks. We would have been spending time, big time. This is the fact of the evidence that's out there that we have to address. The duality, the inconsistency with morality, the inconsistency with true justice, with a true system of laws. You're watching the evidence of a system so degraded that it thinks that a promise to pay in the form of it's not even a cash now, it's going to be a check put in some digital account, is sufficient to remedy and account and make you whole in your harm. That's if you're alive, folks. And don't think you're safe in your car. This is, I don't understand it at some level. I just read this stuff, I just start thinking, I don't have anybody to talk to a lot of times. So I start reading these headlines that I put together, and I start thinking in my head immediately, well, the discussion, I can't stop it, but I got to do it for the broadcast. I have lots to discuss. But we have more. We're behind it, folks. We have to get on the road. We have to get traction on the road. We get the tires. We got the power. We got the gasoline. We got to have a full tank. We got to watch the maintenance on our vehicle that we're going to drive into the downtown, and we're going to stop this stuff, or else it's coming on us. It doesn't stop at your car while you're sleeping. Before you go, as you're going home early in the morning, they'll come in your house now. We've heard about this before. I talked to you about it before. I broached this at the very end of the last broadcast. I want to touch it because I didn't state the point about what this heading, this topic is. Supreme Court or state Supreme Court rules cops no longer need a warrant to enter homes and seize evidence. The point I didn't tell you about was what they used as the basis, and we talked about this before. It's what has destroyed the Fourth Amendment, and what they've used now to destroy the Fourth Amendment was this concept called community care. They've now imposed the right of the government to care for you. Where is that written in the constitutions anywhere? That the Bar Association members, using reflexive thought, not substantial thought, reflexive thought, where they want this thing to go, the future we want. How is community care now destroying a Fourth Amendment right? And it's worse. It's a Fifth Amendment violation. It's a First Amendment violation. It's on and on. This is felonies under color of authority, what these decisions are doing. If you didn't understand what I was saying about community care was going to be used as the pry bar to pry any last vestige away from what you thought was right, here's the evidence of the first Supreme Court case in a state to tell you that. If you didn't believe me, or even if you did, here's the confirmation. Again, I don't even know what more I have to. markonthebeast@yahoo.com. If you have more that you want to hear from me on these stories than me reading the title and pulling out from the story maybe the core idea and moving on to the next opportunity for us to be whacked or to move against. Yes, I could read these stories on and on. I could pull out more details. But again, I'm listening to a broad listenership, or somewhat broad listenership, that may or may not be completely interested in any particular subject matter. So I'm kind of stuck that way in a way. So any suggestions? Otherwise, your contribution to markonthebeast.com is always accepted, and I read them. And I haven't got to a couple of more people. I just remembered that. Talking about a couple of people did write me and said they want to help, or they want to be able to understand enough to do what I do. I haven't got that yet to respond. There's just been a real important thing coming down that I'm falling for. As I read more and more, I tell you folks, it's the more you read, the more there is you see you can do. And the problem is you realize that you can't do it all. There's so much you can do against this. You have to limit what tools you're going to use. Otherwise, it's an endless amount of tools you actually have. And so I've got to do quite extensive research, and then I have to choose of what I thought was one or two things ends up being maybe 10 things, and I don't want to write to that much stuff. I just I'll find the top 3, let's say, and I'll write to that. So I've been focused on this other case. It's very important, and I haven't got to my email. So anybody listening, don't feel that I'm not listening. I just haven't had a chance to really put time to your email. I want to think about what I'd say here. So it's not just I just want to drop you off a chat and send it back. So. Anyway, thank you for those emails. If you have one about this, I'm reading essentially just reading the titles, and I go off, folks. I don't know what else to say. There's a couple points. If you need to hear more of that on these specific stories, and that's what's going to help you better, well, then maybe I can do that. But right now, I'm not feeling too much to say, except that I told you they were going to use this community care. You saw them using it for cars. Now we have 2 stories that say that you're going to be community cared to death, and they can use it to come in your house, and they can undermine the entire limitation that was put on the organic documents. I'm telling you that's evidence you no longer live under them. So stop thinking that you have rights that way. You have to get at them otherwise. And I've been explaining parts of that. And part of that is, even as an occupier, they didn't have a right to undermine the core organic position through their courts. And how do I say their courts? This is Bar Association courts, folks. This is a foreign usurper. I think there's 26 states. You look that your state was substituted for the Model Business Corporation Act. That's pretty simple to understand, it seems. That's how you go after them. They had no right to go after you when they made you out legal. And in particular, I've been able to identify this condition, out legal, with respect to you were never able to be legal because you were of a different status, different state, and they could not trespass. And what am I talking about? Production versus commerce. It's kind of laid out pretty simple. If you're not a commerce entity, they really have no authority. I say production because when I'm tied to land and law of the land, that's where we come from. It also applies to anybody not commerce. It's a little bit more difficult to explain that, though, when you can't go directly to other laws. It's not impossible. It's not hard. It's just that you're in an area of a bunch of people underneath the color of authority who don't want to see it. And so you have to show them so clearly that they can't see it. They see it through their closed eyelids. And if they don't, they're felons again. And you impose that, whether or not that ever goes immediately to anywhere, you impose it in any regard. You impose your rights whether or not the criminal will recognize them. You impose the law whether or not the criminal will recognize it. You don't allow someone that doesn't have an interest in your house to tell you to move out. This is really all that's going on. And so this Supreme Court case is really shocking at some level. But it wasn't unpredictable. And they're doing it by non-constitutional means because they're non-constitutional entities. They're non-constitutional on the land, in the territory, not even on the land. They're right above the land. If you look very carefully at their jurisdiction, it's the territory above the water and the land to which the state of Oregon, the state of Washington, the state of Iowa, the state of Nevada, the state of New Mexico, the state of Nebraska exists. They're right above it. It's a veneer right above it. It's what I call the. It's up the steps. It's in a file cabinet. It's that paper. Put this in literal terms, so you get to see it. There's an image that pops up as soon as you start really making it important this way. When you see the words, it can't be denied. If you listen to me, you don't understand what I'm talking about. I'm just telling you, I'm directing you to these places. I'm directing you with these concepts. What did I say before? You want to prove a negative? Go to the state of Secretary of State and put the name that they have on your legal documents, all in caps, in the Secretary of State's database and search for that name. 9 times, I have to be 10 times out of 10. I've never seen that name, that legal entity pop up in the state. I've just proved a negative. Why? The negative is the presumption that that entity exists. It's not that hard, but that's not the only thing. That's not the end all be all, because they won't recognize that either. You have to develop the other state. You have to develop the status, the state, foreign to theirs and one they can't intrude upon. See, that's the missing connection that most people don't understand. And there's a more subtle one, but it's not so prevalent to move you into the idea of really how this so-called game is being played. This community they're talking about is them, folks. They're caring for them. And you do that, and they won't understand this until more people are doing that. They do that because all the properties are in the commerce state, in the state, by their designations and by the lack of notice they have, because the presumption is, by the rules that they've created, is that they do right, the laws they implement are right, they're presumed so, and your status is subject. It's presumed so. You have to rebut the presumptions, all of them. It's work, and that's a trespass, but you still do it, and you're sitting a whole lot better than anybody I've ever understood elsewise. Because they get all this data from you. That's why I say be careful on your, the Silent Weapons Quiet War is the digital big data. They get all this information that they construct. In fact, I watched the video. They couldn't get him on the identity. They couldn't get him on the age. They got it totally, but they got him on a picture. He didn't listen very carefully at the court to rebut the picture was him. They did it they got jurisdiction on a photo ID. The judge just created it because that's the only thing they had. They couldn't actually connect it to anything. They just connected it on the existence of a photograph, and he didn't challenge it. The presumption was that the government did correct, and he didn't rebut that presumption when they turned from the fingerprint record the FBI had fabricated, provable on the record. The judge did nothing about that lie. And they turned over to a photograph that he didn't attack with the vengeance that he went over after the fingerprint record. And when he didn't, they got him. That's how this game works. You have to pay attention to what the subject matter is at every moment. And so community care, they're coming in, that's only applicable underneath the community. They'll try and prove that you're in the community, and you have to start going after them and prove by the record that you aren't. The information that you give them is what they're using. Like I said, the FBI got they fabricated fingerprints of a guy in court. He attacked it and he beat them on that. They went to a photograph. He didn't attack that. They got him on the presumption that photograph was correct. They get you on the presumption of your big data and your phones. I've been telling you this, but in this issue with the Apple and getting the information from you, and I know it's based on this terror thing, the war of terror, and they use all this to excuse themselves into your life and break down the walls that the Constitution was supposed to limit their authority by going non-constitutional. Remember, we're extrajudicial in this day. There are no courts, actually. That should blow your mind a little bit, really. Everyone will say, well, then what are you going to go to you expect to go to the courts for justice? No, absolutely I do not. And I tell you, but you attack them. You attack them, and there's tools to attack them as you go in. You take them out before they get started. I did that in 2013 with the injunction. I'm setting up a record for a friend. We're doing it again. We take out the court immediately. Now, we take them out on paper. We certainly don't take them out in the force and brutality that they are. And that's a different, you have to approach that differently. But now we see with this Apple, this big data that the government wants, and the attack that the FBI was doing on Apple, the FBI admits that the Apple encryption case means legal precedent, not just to one phone, was the breaking story as we went through the week. But then it happens that the judge, and I think the judge did an interesting traverse here. The judge comes out after that story and says that Apple doesn't have to help the FBI in the New York iPhone case. And so this is setting the precedent that the judge, it looked like, I didn't see how the judge had a right to decide this, actually. The point is that there's a corporation out there that wants to pretend they're fighting for your rights, pretend that they're doing something to protect you. It's all based in some commerce promotion, and I think the courts are involved in this, and the FBI is wanting to actually do what they want to do, but they're using this opportunity to persuade you that it's still going to be something you can trust, this iPhone stuff, all these Internet of Things. Oh, we've got companies looking out for you. No, they're looking out for bottom line. Bottom line. That's it. So is the government. And the bottom line for the government is if they can make everybody, well, the criminals that they know that exist, we live in an open-air prison, you're all criminals. It's whether or not they catch you for more. Breaking your liberty. Your ability to go between your pod and your food source at the right time and take the right shower and watch the right TV program. Apple doesn't have to help the FBI in the New York case over this condition. And so we always breathe a sigh of relief, folks. This is not even about that. So again, if you're in on this, if you care at all about this digital world they're putting us into, this cashless society and all this other stuff, and you want to, it's just there's no anonymity actually, even despite there's some tools that give you pseudo-anonymity. Remember all that. It's not proof that you have anonymity. But at least restrain for yourself the government's intrusion, because they make stuff up. They take bits and pieces and they put it together, like that one court case I read. I was just explaining. I saw a video on the FBI took fingerprints they took from a guy one day before, and they ran him back through arrest record, and they put him into a case of an arrest record that was dated on a date that would have been that the guy that they had before him, his fingerprints were put into a file of a crime that happened when he was 17 days old. And so now we see evidence that they'll take pieces and parts to make up the evidence. This is supposed to be your justice. This is DOJ investigators are fabricating evidence. It's not something, oh yeah, we knew that. No, you have to understand that that's what you're up against. And so your phones are these confessors. And there's a little circus going on around this thing with Apple. But the court came back and said, we're not going to allow you to do that. And you need to read why. So we start to see the game. If we can start to, we start to get the idea that these players, the corporations and the governments, are all working together. They make stories up. They want to. Their inroads are about the war on terror, the war of terror against you. You sit crickets like you may be interested, but you're not figuring out how you have to move against it. They're just getting you to really calm down on the fact that you're under attack. They think, oh, the Apple's a good guy. Well, no, they're not. In the war of terror, anything can be used against you. And the lies can happen, and they'll tell you lies, and then you think you go to sleep and you think that they're not matter, and then when they do matter, it doesn't matter. Why? Because that's what Hillary Clinton says. What difference does it make now? We're so far past the point, we're on other things. What difference does it make now? She was absolute. All these people tell you the truth, but it's in a deceitful way. And that's one thing I don't know that we're catching as well. But this information of the true utility starts to come out, that you have to, in a true action that comes out to show you that, well, Obama said, if you don't trust the government, we have a problem. These are evidences that you have the right to not trust if you needed that. And I don't see, there's a lot of people that say, F the government. We don't trust them. That's not the kind of thing I'm talking about. I'm talking about pulling the proof together to go against the presumptions that they do right. I'm talking about your sentiment in proof in action against them. It's a whole different thing I talk about. It might get lost in that. It's so subtle in some regard what I'm talking about. Obama says you don't trust the government. Trust is confidence. Confidence is the currency. I keep telling you all that. You have to tie that together. You have to refute their presumptions. You can't go in the day that you just deny something and then ask a bunch of questions. No, you assert that they violated the provisions that they were supposed to uphold. You don't trust the government. Obama sent weapons to Muslim terrorists in Benghazi. No, duh. Well, here's a story that proves it, okay? Now, you don't trust the government now, folks. He said it. Now you bring it. The Nobel laureate of peace. Bringing up the Benghazi lie and the Trey Gowdy thing. Why didn't Trey Gowdy bring this up? Obviously now, this guy's not going to stop an attack on a plan that they were needing to kill after they did their dirty deed. War of terror, folks. They use every excuse to pass through and get done what they need done. And we look right past it. We ask all the wrong questions. In fact, we ask questions instead of making factual statements with proof in hand. I'm talking proof, not opinion, folks. This is so... People have a hard time understanding, I think, that. I really, because I only say that in response to what I talk with people after explaining some things and what I get back. Is opinion and conversation not the thing you have to do. I keep saying, you don't advance a question. You advance the evidence that shows the crime. And certainly the whodunit. You fulfill the elements of being the prosecutor in your life against those that come against you. And I keep telling you, it's a target-rich environment. And if you don't do that, they're working against you. This Internet of Things has been told to us. You think that iPhone's going to is going to defend it at all points. The government's finding every excuse to come after this information. Even to the point of making stuff up. I keep telling you about the FBI records. The fingerprints taken of a man 24 hours before was attached 24 hours later to a record of someone that had done a crime back at 20. That would have been the date of 17. He was 17 days old. How can his big fingerprints be on this crime that happened 30 years before? And yet they fabricated that and actually put that in the evidence, and the court did not find that such a violation to go after the prosecutor, to go after the investigator, the FBI of no less. Tampering with evidence. Wow, where's the people? Where I don't hear the clink into the jail, folks, on this stuff. So these people are relentless, and they have no compunction to be moral about what they do. They're no longer doing the justice that they're supposed to do. You have to understand that not as an opinion, as a way you prove it. And this may be indicating an indicative here, this next report, of what they're willing to do when they're coming after you. And this is just one little dot. They do this in lots of places. San Bernardino DA, based again on this iPhone case, right? On the fabrication of evidence, on the claim they need evidence, and they need excuses to get in. Apparently there is a Fourth Amendment. Community care is not working here, folks. Now, isn't that interesting? San Bernardino DA says seized iPhone may hold, quote, dormant cyber pathogen, close quote. Dormant cyber pathogen. If this wasn't serious, this is a comedy show, folks. I'm really, inside part of me wants to just bust out laughing. I hope you did. I got to keep composure here because I'm doing a broadcast. Dormant cyber pathogen. They make this stuff up. There's nobody in the cybersecurity world that knows what a dormant cyber pathogen is. And yet they use this to try and get information. Another excuse. If you didn't understand what you're up against, understand how insane the claim can be that they'll present. First of all, they don't claim anything in the first instance, and when they're forced to, they have no limit on the creation and fabrication and artifice that they use, the artifice, the fraud that they'll create in order to make justification for their actions. These are supposed to be people that are investigating what's available. not fabricating the means to make an investigation in fabrication. So understand, this is the enemy you're up against. Obama says if you can't trust the government, we have a problem, folks. And when you have people, DAs, this is another bar member, fabricating something that's never ever existed in the wild, as they say, the cyber world, you know we're gone into la la land. You have to know that's what's going on. You have to know that that's the threat at all times. At all times, yes, because they take license that you can be tracked and traced everywhere until when? Till someone successfully challenges. So we see the presumption that the government actually is believed to be doing lawful all the time. They're making this stuff up, fabricating this underneath court systems that are They're all mock trials, I'll just put it that way. Oh, when you walk into the trial, it's made up to look like a trial, a courtroom. It's all mock. Just go to mock trials on the internet. You'll find them. There's companies that do this. You couldn't tell a private-public partnership company, which is the bar, running the court systems from a mock trial training company. You wouldn't know the difference. Probably why they don't allow you to take pictures in federal court, and you have to make drawings. So you're, again, one more removed from the evidence of the mockness of it. And I say that in particular because I absolutely know. If I had a question before our lawsuit, I certainly don't now, that the United States District Court, USDC Court, has no jurisdiction. It's an Article 1, Article 2, an Article 1 or Article 4 court. They're not an Article 3 court. You look at the paperwork you send to a USDC court, and the response that you'll get is from a United States District and Bankruptcy Court. The conjunction tells you what that's all about. It's a commerce court in bankruptcy. The entire veneer nation is in that. That's what the Article 4 courts are about. That's where all these Bundy people are. That's where all the David Frys and all these Shawns and all these people are underneath this bankruptcy system. They don't even understand it. That the court has no jurisdiction. But notwithstanding that, there's something that's working, and apparently sometimes when you get inside these anomalies, you see what seems to be now anomalous decisions, where they have a community care. How come the FBI can't use community care? Well, they use it in a different way. It's called national security. How's that? But when it's challenged correctly, or maybe closely, no, turning on your phone is not consenting to being tracked by the police. A new case coming out in Maryland, for those of you that want to pay attention to this. And I'm asking you folks, do so. We have to be knowledgeable. You have to be able to understand this stuff to be able to respond. I know there's not a lot of people being affected by it, but that's the slow incremental pressure. Not a lot of people will be affected by it. You're only affected as the system wants to have it affected, like they did when they destroyed all the mortgages. When the first person asked, "Wait a minute, my mortgage and my title is not together. What happened?" Whoops, big problem. Maryland Court of Special Appeals on Wednesday, special appeals, interesting. Wednesday upheld a historic decision by historic. I don't know why this is historic, but here it is. This is the times we live in. This is historic, this decision by a state trial court, that the warrantless use of cell site stimulators or stingrays violates the Fourth Amendment. The trial court had suppressed evidence obtained by the warrantless use of a stingray, the first time any court in the nation had done so. I won't read more. This tells you, though, that you're going to be subject to this charge, even though the evidence against you may be thrown out. In other words, the system has enough of presumed lawful authority when you don't challenge it to make this decision against you, whether or not they're going to allow it. In this case, they didn't allow the collection of evidence from warrantless cell site stimulators called stingrays. So, word to the wise. There is limits, but you have to find how. You got to go read this stuff. I can't do the analysis on this case, actually, in some regard to it, without looking at a whole lot of things. But apparently, where there's community care and there is no Fourth Amendment, there certainly must be here. What's the difference is what's going to have to be analyzed for. Now, this is just one state. I don't know how long this is going to last. But they're claiming that in this case, on this set of facts, that it was you had to suffer the charge to move to dismiss, to go into the court, and all the expense and the harassment that it takes, and all the detriment to your life, as a person, to petition the court to dismiss evidence that was wrongly gathered. In this case, the gathering of evidence from a stingray site, a false cell site, that they collect up your information. Again, the evidence here is that they do that. This is not a joke. This is not a Snowden surmise. This is not some piece of paper we think that they're doing this. No, this is not a FOIA that you couldn't get out of them. This is the fact now. Evidence right here. This is what you're up against. And we're not helpless. An interesting little twist I wanted to point out to y'all. How this works and what you might get as ways to glean evidence for those of you that research and really try to do work, maybe investigative reporters, or trying to put together the pieces of the puzzle of the crime against you. An activist wrote a script to FOIA. This is federal now, because it'd be open records request for the states, but federal, it's FOIA, Freedom of Information Act. The files of 7,000 dead FBI officials. So remember, the tactic of going after the UK licensing fee brings up the fact that the BBC is deemed to have been complicit with the 9/11 by falsely reporting. This is a way to get information on dead FBI office officials and their files, because when they're dead, they're dead. There's nothing there that the state has control over. And so you can gather the information from them, and this gentleman has written a script, and I have the link. You can get to it if you're interested. I don't know. It doesn't really interest me more right now. And there is an interest for a couple of things we have running, but I don't have the time to do much of it. And the what I'd be looking for is so limited that it may not even come up with. But remember, you can connect the dots of the people behind the scenes of where they were, what they did, what their proclivities were, and you can start making intelligence for yourself upon this thing. Who would have thought that you could get the records from dead FBI agents, and they can't stop you? And so an activist has written a script. I guess it makes the requests. So here's a tool, if you're wondering. And so some people that are involved can be those that did the investigation and were really sharp to pull out little points and pieces from different dead agents and connect up different projects and programs and techniques and tactics, or whatever the heck, their connections, where they worked, how they worked, where they were assigned, their lineage of all that could be pulled out from some of these records. Not sure. I've never seen the record. I'm not sure what could be done. But here's another source of information for those of you that are going to roll your sleeves up. To show you again, back to the FBI's interest to fabricate, and DA's and bar associations' interest to fabricate evidence and grab up what they want and where they want, how they want to do it, and the ramifications of this when they decide. It's all presumed they're doing lawful, and in fact they're doing it as crime. You have to understand the technology's coming along, like it's the Internet of Things. It's the way to gather information. Silent weapons for quiet wars. Remember, it's your place in the system. You plug yourself in. This is what I'm talking about. When I say you go into commerce, you've made an application. You've plugged yourself into that jurisdiction. And there's supposed to be a limitation. They're not supposed to come after you if you're not there. And they're not supposed to fabricate records in order to make it look like you are there. And you don't go making you're just creating a straw man. That's irrelevant. Prove that name is not you. Prove it doesn't even exist. Then you don't have to prove it's not you, don't it? Simple. Don't make the excuse of making an argument out of it. Just prove the fact. But you have to be careful that the technology is creeping up on us. And this starts leading in when I was telling you before, I saw technology, and you're seeing it now. It's in your iPhone, and you go across an intersection. By the time you reach the intersection and you went through a red light, they're going to have your bank discounted before you get to the other side. It'll be automatic. They know exactly where you are, how to do it, what to do, why to do it, and that you done it. And I said, and at some point they go looking at your bank account, and you don't have enough for the fine. Before you reach the other end, you actually might get a hellfire in your back end. When they say you're just a useless eater, we can't make money from you for your violation you did to all the people. And so here's some information for those of you that would try to chance that yellow light. To be careful, you may not be able. They're getting tighter and tighter. There was a range of error. There was a diameter that they may or may not hit you. But now it's coming down that the new technique makes GPS accurate to an inch. If you didn't understand this, tracking and tracing will have you down to the inch. Here's the proof, the evidence. GPS is utterly pervasive and wonderful technology, but it's increasingly not accurate enough for modern demands. Now a team of researchers can make it accurate down to an inch. That's all I'm going to read. No, the military had this before, and a lot of it had to do with the amount of satellites. I bet that's helped contributing. The point is they have you down to the inch, folks. That hellfire's, those of you that are going to run that yellow light, that hellfire is right behind you. Here's the problem. We also see in the news, and it's now backwards news, that last story came later than this one. NSA Skynet program may be killing thousands of innocent people. Understand this technology has been used to get it down to the inch. What Skynet would be doing for the drones. Remember Obama, the peacemaker, droning everybody just 'cause, right? This is where this technology starts to happen. You got your iPhone or your big license, your Real ID in the back pocket, your Star, your phone, your Apple phone, whatever. They got it down to an inch, and out of the sky comes the hellfire, folks. If you don't think this is all ready to put together. That even the Russians are seeing the anomaly, as seen on a Russian bus stop. It's a poster written in Russian with Obama smoking a cigarette. Smoking kills more people than Obama. The Russians see this stuff from that far away, what's going on. And we are suffering underneath. Suffering, I say suffering because you continue to allow the harm to exist. That's suffering. Smoking kills more people than Obama. Poster at a bus stop in Russia. They see this guy, this Nobel laureate, is not what he's the evil that anybody who has been looking at this sees that he is. He's on the tap. The NSA has these drone systems that they command, that they now have technology down to the inch now, folks. And they do it wrong. The presumption that they're right is a wrong presumption. And it's not limited now. I tell you that it's the boulder in the pond. It's the ripple effect. I said it's coming. These guys are coming across the United States with this technology. We now hear the police drones are authorized in North Dakota to taser you. You think the NSA was the one? No, it's already in your states and starting. The cancer is starting. They do more. They kill and hurt more innocent people is the message there. I hope you caught. Under a presumption that they don't. And their technology now can get you down to the inch. It's not a question now. I've explained all this years ago. It's actually kind of scary to watch coming up, but I mean, it's just expected, so I can't get too scared of myself. It's kind of like I know the boogeyman was under the bed, only this boogeyman's actually real. It's what was coming. It's predictable. And the cancer spreads, as we hear now, hitting the news this week. Police appealed to lawmakers for options on arming drones. In North Dakota, they were just going to tase you. They're going to track you down with a drone and tase you. Now, I don't know. I guess they get you down to the inch. They can identify you and tase you, right? Because you walked across you're not going to get across the street jaywalking anymore. They'll tase you right there. But another state's coming up, and they're going to now try to weaponize these drones. I think it's in Connecticut. I mean, I look at this stuff, I want to start reading, and I don't really want to read. It's here in the titles. Do you want me to read to you? Or do you want to just have access to these? Or do you just want to hear what's going on and carry on? And okay, well, that's what they're happening in Connecticut. It's not in my backyard. The drone discussion has been buzzing around the state capitol for hearings for weeks. Monday, a bill to ban the weaponization of drones was discussed, which means they're actually discussing how to weaponize them. So it went from tasers to weaponization of these drones. At the police, within an inch of your life, they got you with drones to come down, and most of the people they kill, they hurt and harm with these things are innocent. We got all the stories right here. But guess what? You think, well, what's a taser? How can harm that be? Another story. It's already happening to us, and we don't know. Well, we do now. Cops using taser, even if they limit it just to the taser, what harm could be? So they drop you onto the ground, and you crack your egg. Your head hits the ground, and you crack your egg, and now you're kind of messed up for a little bit. But they don't care. They'll pay you some money. But no, the cops use taser to light gasoline-soaked man on fire. And guess what? He gets to file a lawsuit. Police officer tasered a young man at the scene of a serious car accident, setting his gasoline-soaked clothing ablaze and nearly killing him in a lawsuit filed by the man's guardians claim. Remember, folks, you may not be too good to be doing your own lawsuits. Oh, but it's okay, we'll just pay money. These cops are not, you can be too smart to be a cop and too psychologically unstable to be a cop, but they're cops. They tase someone with gasoline on them, lights them on fire. How is that going to work with a drone? That's no different than a hellfire in my mind. Well, the guy did survive, maybe a little different, except his guardians are doing this supposed guardians now, guardian after the fact. Folks, it's the nonsense is here. You can continue to be crickets, or we can move against it. There's millions and millions of us if we would just step up. This is nonsense. It's an insanity beyond insanity. It has no moral basis. You have people that will shoot a taser a man that's soaked in gasoline, and he's out of an accident. What was one of the first stories I say? The cop raped a woman that was in an accident. These are animals, folks. I'm getting excited again. Oh, jeez. Cops using a taser the drone attached to a taser. What harm could it be, folks? What could possibly go wrong with this? The technology to surveil you at a distance. I'm surprised this next story even happens when you find that GPS will get you down to an inch. Pay by plate is really a nationwide licensing plate tracking system created by the AECOM and DHS. They're tracking you, they're following you, they got more programs now. This license plate, folks, how about if you just get rid of the license plate? Oh, that'll arrest me. Well, that's right, they will arrest you. So how about if you learn the road law and say you don't need the license plate because you're violating the law to impose that I need a plate, a license, a permission to pursue a commercial activity? How about if you start that argument now before you get yourself to the point you are in trouble? Or is it just going to be easier to pay your tax as you travel? Now, this is on a toll road, but they're doing states are now bringing in the pay-by-the-mile systems. They aren't going to need all the fabrication you see on the toll systems where they can track you GPS by down to the inch, folks. It's just not going to be the reality. That's a diversion. This is where it goes. This is what they do to get you thinking that it's okay. That we really have to cut through this. It's on the doorstep. It's actually beyond. They're admitting they'll hurt more innocent people than they'll save. They're willing to harm victims of accidents. And they're telling you they're willing to abuse you when you're in your most vulnerable state. Think about this. Think about these people, the system that allows this. I don't know what to say about it. This is how heinous it's gotten. They're tracking and tracing us everywhere. They got us in statuses that we don't understand how to respond. And when we do respond, we don't respond properly. Do I know the extent of properly? Absolutely not. But I know there's a more proper way to go, and we attempt to do that all the time. And when we do it that way, it certainly changes the dynamic of the battle, if there is one. A lot of times it pretty much ends it. It pretty much shows the distinction. And now you're looking at, you've also identified in that moment someone who intends to be a criminal. This is not even it's not a judgment, it's a fact. They've just declared themselves to be that. I think the battle's over there. It's just a matter of making the arrest, isn't it? And that's coming up, as far as we start to do all this. So DHS on this plate reader stuff, you need to contact DHS. I think they're supposed to go under Title V United States Code. Where was the public hearing? Where are you going to identify the people that are not in commerce? Where do you go to prove that? Title 18. Title 18. Under motor vehicle. Look for that. Section 31, sub 10. Where did the DHS make provision under this federal national license plate scheme to make sure that people that weren't in commerce did not have a plate and were still safe to travel down the highway? It's a question I'd want to pose to the federal authority to show you the connection backwards. You're looking for tactics, folks. You may not be able to get it from your local state judges, aren't going to tell you, but the DHS using monies from the federal government are going to have to show how they're not interfering with the local population wrongly. So, thank you very much for tuning in today. I looked over and almost got lost in the time. Appreciate that you do tune in. I really hope you use the information. I know it'll go fast, but the archive's cool in the fact that you can replay it if you need to, if you can stand to listen to my voice more than the time that you already listened to it to. Apparently some people can't, but that's okay. Thank you for donating to reallibertymedia.com and all the donations you have to keep the servers running for Grimner and what he does and all the fine work he does and the help, and to the hosts and keeping the equipment going for them, and World Truth and Grammy Mary and your dedication to what you're doing there, and Jules same way. Just a great job that you pull that all together to terrestrial broadcasters. Appreciate that, folks. Just contact other broadcasting networks and maybe get them to accept the podcast here or whatever. They can play it whenever they want to, like everybody else does, or tune in at the time that they were broadcasting, noon o'clock Pacific, every Sunday. Every Sunday. How many have I missed? I mean, I don't know. I think one hand still covers it, right? So thank you anyway. Take care. Technical difficulties and other things will, and I'll be here again and again and again until we can get make it down to one cricket. Maybe it will stop long before that. Take care.